Bugs. They suck. I've tried so many different sprays and found that those alone just don't work. Thankfully, I've discovered Farnham's No Fly Zone to help rid my barn of those annoying, filthy, disease carrying flies, ticks, and mosquitoes. With Farnham's three-stage approach of block, repel, reduce, which means using different products for different scenarios, you can set yourself up for success. So I physically block flies from my horse with a super mask, repel with the Endure sweat resistant fly spray, which is my personal favorite and is great for summer in Florida. And then I actually reduce the number of flies I'm dealing with by using their feed through fly control Simplify in my barn. To learn more and start your own no-fly zone, go to farnham.com, that's FARNAM.com, and download a free copy of the Horse Owner's Guide to Creating Your Own No-Fly Zone. Again, that's FARNAM.com. Farnham, our partner in fly control. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Ride. This is Jillian. Nicole is out of town, so it'll just be me on this episode. We have a very exciting guest for you who has really an incredible story that I'm so excited for you all to hear. I'd like to welcome Filipe Masetti, who is the youngest person to cross the Americas on horseback. I'm going to let him fill you in on the rest of his story because I don't think that I could even know where to start. So thank you so much for being here today, Filipe. Why don't you, kind of introduce yourself and tell our listeners your story?
For sure. Thank you, Jillian, for the invitation to share a bit of my story. So just like you said, I'm the youngest person in the world to cross the Americas on the back of a horse. I rode more than 25,000 kilometers across 12 nations over the course of 8 years from Fairbanks, Alaska, all the way to the southernmost city on the planet, Ushuaia, Argentina. It's on a little island on the bottom of Argentina. And I started, it was 3 different journeys. The first one was from Canada to Brazil. And then I did Brazil to the southern tip of Argentina. And 2 years ago, I did the final stretch from Alaska back to Calgary, where I was welcomed by the Stampede as the Grand Marshal that year. I was white-hatted by the mayor, and it was an awesome experience.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So what inspired you to start your first journey? What was the inspiration behind that?
So it was like a very gradual dream that kind of grew up with me. When I was a little kid, my dad used to read me Chifley's Ride, which is a book that tells the story of the most epic long ride of all time. Aim Chifley, a Swiss school teacher who traveled from Buenos Aires, Argentina, all the way to New York City in 1925 with 2 Criollo horses. And I don't know why, but it just captivated my imagination so much. I remember being at my family farm in Brazil, riding my little horse, imagining I was the guy, crossing all those countries and swimming rivers with crocodiles. And when I was 9 years old, my parents ended up moving to Canada. I grew up in Ontario, rodeoing. I used to tie down rope. And then I went off to school for journalism. And it was just something very strong. It was like, man, what if I followed that dream? Like, what if I went on my own long ride and then used journalism to kind of pay for the trip as my profession and also share it with people? And then I built a war room. I spent 2 years acquiring everything I needed, from the knowledge to the horses, to the pack saddle, to my riding saddle, to all of my equipment. Everything was sponsored. And when I got everything I needed on July 8th of 2012, I left the Calgary Stampede.
So when you were preparing, how did you even begin to pick the horses or horse for that journey? I feel like that takes a really special animal to be able to do that with you.
Yeah, for sure. So I spoke to long riders around the world who were just instrumental. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You got to learn from people that actually did it and were successful at it. So an example, Gunter, who's an amazing long rider from Germany, helped me out a lot. Bernice Sandy from the U.S., Pedro from Brazil. And they taught me everything: what kind of saddle to use, what kind of saddle pad to use, how many kilometers to ride a day, how many days to ride, how many days to rest, and what kind of horse I would need. For a long ride, You want a horse that's over 5 years old, so their bones are mature, their muscles and their mind as well. You don't want a horse that has had some kind of previous injury, you know what I mean, because that could flare up on a ride like this. Any breed will do it. You want a horse that's obviously strong and fit, and if it's not fit, you need to be able to go out there and ride 5 kilometers the first day, 6 the next, and very gradually get them up to that 30-kilometer a day mark, which is what I was riding. But ultimately, it was kind of the universe that picked the horses because they were given to me. So my 2 horses came from 2 ranches in Montana. Stan Weaver, quarter horses. Stan Weaver was the president of the Quarter Horse Association a couple years ago down in the U.S. He gave me my horse Frenchie, Frenchman's Guy, and for those that know quarter horse breeding. And then Copper Spring Ranch, also out of Montana, gave me my second horse Bruiser. He's a dash for cash. Those are the horses that I started my journey. When I got to the southern part of the U.S., I was given a third horse, a Mustang named Dude from the Taos Pueblo Aboriginal people, and he helped me out so much. Those Mustangs are just so rustic. They're like little tanks, and he was amazing for the ride.
Wow, I can't even imagine having, one horse and yourself to take care of. So you were out there, and how did you take care of yourself and the horses? What did you eat? What did you feed them? How did that work?
Yeah, so that was the toughest, is not only taking care of yourself, but you've got 3 babies that, rely on you 24 hours a day. As you know, horses, it's hard enough to take care of your horse when you're at a ranch, when there's running water and a grain bucket and a stack of hay. But when you're out there by yourself, crossing deserts and mountains, it's just, you, the animals, and God. And it was just so hard. Feed, I would allow them to graze for 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours at night. And then I would take the saddles off at lunch and let them graze for about an hour. But the hardest part was finding water. There were portions of the journey where I couldn't find water for them. They'd go to sleep with no water. I'd have to get up the next day and just literally go to war and find water because, as you know, colic is a ginormous problem for us in the horse world today. And one of those factors is when horses don't drink enough and they're so dehydrated. So that was the hardest part. But I learned a trick of the trade from Bernice Andy, who I kind of mentioned here earlier, an amazing long rider. She taught me to always carry cooking oil with me wherever I was, and that kind of helps to lubricate, to kind of get your horse's intestine, which is super long and sometimes can become dry when they're just eating all day, have no water. It brings some moisture to that and allows for them not to colic. So I always carried cooking oil with me, had a big syringe, and if I didn't have water, I would dump it down their throats. It's also great to put in their feed and makes the horse's coats very shiny and gives them a lot of energy. So different people will use it as well, kind of like an extra little for their animals.
Yeah, it's funny that, that's something that I hear so many people do just with their horses at home, and the fact that you were able to use it in such a different way, but to do such a similar thing, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So did you have any problems? I mean, I'm sure you did, but with your horses, did they, have lameness issues or get sick or anything like that? What was that like?
Yeah, so obviously tons of problems, but the major ones were my horse Bruiser colicked in Central America. I woke up one morning and a super nice rancher was like, I woke up at 6 and fed your horses corn. I'm like, corn? I'm like, oh no, like down in Central America, they use corn a lot. For feed, it's cheaper and easier to get. But as you know, you can't just give them corn one day. It's a recipe for disaster. So sure enough, he colicked. But luckily, I had some Benamine with him. I was able to, to give it to him, and he was okay, and he was able to go to the bathroom and finally got out of it. My horse Frenchie was hit by a truck in southern Mexico, which was just a terrible moment of the journey, probably the worst moment of my life. I didn't know if he was going to survive, if he had broken something, but thankfully he was okay. We had to stitch him, and he was all cut up, but he survived, and we were able to continue. And then I had another major issue with my Mustang Dude. He fell into an old cattle guard in Central America and ended up cutting up his front right leg pretty bad, down to the bone. I didn't know if he was going to, be able to continue. But again, luckily, we were able to take care of him and doctor him and kind of wait until he was better. And we were all able to continue again.
That's crazy. I just still can't imagine doing that. For how long was your original journey supposed to be?
So the first journey, I thought it was going to take about 1.5 to 2 years, and it ended up taking 2 years and a half almost.
But you were gone for a total of 8 years over the
Yeah,
span?
all 3 journeys amounted to 8 years.
Wow, that's I guess you just kind of got used to living that lifestyle. But so kind of walk me through a day in the life of you being on that journey. What was it like? I mean, I'm assuming you were out there all by yourself, and what kind of technology did you have? How did you survive, I guess?
Yeah, so a day in the life, you wake up early, crack of dawn. Horses are usually high line, put the hobbles on them, let them graze for a bit while you take down camp. Make yourself something to eat quick. I would eat, peanut butter with bread or some beef jerky, peanuts, just things that were easy to eat and kind of gave you energy. Take down tent. Once the horses kind of ate for a bit, I would saddle everyone up, which could take a while. You got your pack horse, you got to organize everything in the pack saddle, make sure it weighs the same, and then tie your hitch. And by the time you go, it's already been about 2 hours and you get going. And then I would ride 30 kilometers in a day. So I would do about 10 kilometers in the morning. That's about 2 hours. Stop for 15 minutes, half an hour, let the horses rest, kind of eat a granola bar, and then go for another 10 kilometers. Stop for lunch, take saddles off, let everyone rest, and kind of recoup, and then do the final 10 kilometers. Find a place. If there's a house, a ranch, you always ask for help. That's the best part of the journey, the kindness of humanity. I always had 1 to 7 angels along my path every day to help me out. And when there's no one, you kind of look for a place where there's water for the horses, a good place to camp, and then set up camp and fall asleep because you're so tired. And then the next day, do the same thing. In terms of technology, I had my phone with me. I was filming everything. So I had a couple cameras, GoPros, my computer. I was writing for the Toronto Star and several blogs kind of during the journey. And then I had a backpack that had solar powered panel on it that I could charge everything, and a lot of different batteries when I got to someone's house or a ranch, just steal their electricity and charge everything before you go again.
Yeah, that's wow. So you were relying on, strangers basically throughout your trip. What was that like? I feel like that was probably a eye-opening experience.
Yeah, it was the best part of the journey. It was the most special. I've been able to sit down at the dinner table with drug lords and politicians and people that had everything and people that had nothing, and you kind of really learn that our skin color may change, the color of our flags, how much money we have in the bank, but we're all inherently the same. When you're in those homes, you just realize people just want to love and be loved, and they just want the best for their families. And you also learn that the horse is a common language that breaks down barriers. That was kind of like the glue of everything, and the magnet were those horses. Because the first thing when I got to those ranches or those homes, I would ask, hey, would I be able to rest my horses here today? And those people, a lot of them that had horses, they were looking at the animals first and they wanted to help them. And then all of a sudden, chatting and putting the horses up somewhere in a pasture or something, they learn about me, and all of a sudden I'm in their home, and we're hugging and kissing, and they don't want you to leave the next day. You become a family, literally, with these people, and that was by far the most special part of the journey. All at least 12 nations get to eat dinner and lunch and get to know these people literally in their homes is just so awesome.
Yeah, I can imagine the stories that you heard. That's a really really cool experience, I'm sure. So, what were some of the most valuable lessons that you learned? Well, I you probably can't even name all of them, but what were some major things that you took from that journey that you want to share with, the rest of the world?
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the big ones is the kindness of humanity. Like I've just said, I think sometimes the media sells us this portrayal of the world that is not true. You watch, it's just um, negative news the entire time. And when you go out there and put yourself out like the way I did, traveling 30 kilometers a day and having to literally like ask for help to strangers that have never met you before, you realize how kind people are. Another one is like just how far my limit is. I really tested my limit out there every single day, and you begin to realize that you can do whatever the hell you want. Like before I left, people told me that this was impossible, that I was going to die, that my horses are going to die, that they couldn't fathom that someone of my age would be able to go on one of the hardest journeys ever recorded. And what you start to learn is that if you're willing to put in the work and you're willing to plan it, I always say strategic planning is the difference between success and failure. Nothing is impossible, and today I think I'm living proof of that. And my books and my documentary, that's a huge theme in it, is that if whatever your dream is, whatever your purpose, whatever your project, if you're willing to put in that work, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah. That's, I honestly, I'm kind of speechless. It's just such a cool experience that, I think it's so, you were documenting all of it. Tell us about that, about your books and your documentary. How did you put it all together into one piece?
Yeah, so I studied journalism in school. I love storytelling, and I very quickly realized that if I was to sell this dream, because it's one thing to sell an iPhone or a computer or a shirt, it's real. You show it someone, you say buy this shirt, but when you're selling a dream, it's non-existent. So I realized that I had to create a product, and because I'm a journalist, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna sell this documentary. Like a production company's gonna buy the product, which is a documentary, and I'll film it for them. So I managed to convince a production company out of Nashville to buy the project, and I filmed everything for them. They armed me with all the cameras and the equipment and the logistics. I would send them the cards. Once they were full, they would send them back to me through FedEx in the middle of like Honduras and Guatemala. And then the other part of it were the books as well, and these articles that I got to write for different publications. So now I have 3 books out. The first one is called Long Ride Home. That tells the first part of the journey from Canada to Brazil. It became a bestseller on Amazon and also in Brazil. It's printed in Portuguese and English. I have my second book called Long Ride to the End of the World. That's also a bestseller, and that tells the story of my ride from Brazil to the southern tip of Argentina. And now later on this month, I'm going to release my third book, Last Long Ride, which is about the last long ride, obviously from Alaska back to Calgary. And the documentary just came out. We've been going to film festivals around the world. We've been to festivals in Canada, the US, India, and it's picked up 4 awards already. We're super happy about, the critics have been very kind as well. You can kind of Google it, The Long Rider, it's called. We've gotten some amazing reviews, and we just released it in Toronto. It's had a 7-day run at Cineplex Yonge and Dundas, some sold out events, which were amazing. Now we go to Calgary, Alberta for 7 days. It'll be at the O Market in the downtown core. It will start running Friday now. I don't know when this is coming out, but it'll start running on July 1st and it'll run to July 8th. And then on July 8th, it comes out across Canada from coast to coast in 17 cities and towns.
Wow, that's awesome. So I'm so excited. We'll definitely have to I'll link all of that down below so you guys can check out everything. Yeah. So I feel like I have so many questions. I don't even know.
And just take the opportunity for all the people listening here. We're against like blockbuster films at these theaters like Elvis and Top Gun. So this is a grassroots project. It's a small documentary. It's going to be on Super Channel, Amazon Prime later on in the year. But if you can, send it out to family members or people who you think would enjoy the film, please do, because it helps us tremendously. So Jillian will put all the information here underneath.
Yeah, definitely. So let me think. What is something that you wish that you could have told yourself before you started your first journey?
What is something that I could have told myself? I think I would have told myself to prepare for the end. When I finished that first journey, I lived the worst 6 months of my life. Like I went into a terrible depression, anxiety, reoccurring nightmares, like for several reasons, but one of them being I completely lost purpose to my life. A huge vacuum is created when you spent your entire life dreaming of something, and then you spent years fighting for it, and then you spent 2 years and a half fighting to live it and get there, and then you get there and it's like, now what? So I think I would have told myself to prepare better for the end of that first journey, for sure.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I'm sure you had an kind of an expectation, but I'm sure how can you even prepare for what you were going to face? What 100%. Are some of the craziest or most exciting things that you came across that you on any of your journeys?
Yeah, so like I said, a lot of hurdles, a lot of problems, it's truly an action film. From grizzly bears on the last journey, I was crossing 3 grizzlies a day, grizzlies coming into camp, having to throw horses into rivers to run away from bears. Drug lords, I had to stay in the home of a drug lord in Central America with his cartel, everyone heavily armed, AK-47s, semi-automatic weapons. He lived in a compound, a mansion, kids as young as 9 years old. packing heat. He had a zoo in his house, across the Chihuahua Desert, which is one of the largest deserts in the world, across the Rocky Mountains and the Andes. So a lot of exciting moments, a lot of scary moments, a lot of beautiful moments. I met my fiance on my second long ride to Ushuaia, Argentina. Literally asked for help at her parents' house and stole the farmer's daughter. And today we're engaged to get married. So that was the biggest present that this journey gave me. So yeah, a lot of exciting things.
That's such a cool way to meet your fiance. That's definitely a unique meet story. So did she end up going on the journeys with you after you met, or how did you maintain that relationship?
Yeah, for sure. So I invited her out to come ride with me, and she came for a month, and then she ended up being there when I arrived in Ushuaia as well. And then we kind of had the long distance relationship for a bit. And my last long ride from Alaska to Ushuaia, this amazing family from Claresholm, Alberta, the Aikens, lent us this motorhome so we could have a support vehicle on that journey. And Clara got to come out for the entirety of it and keep us safe in amongst the bears, and we were able to carry feed for the horses. It's a lot of muskeg up there. When I was studying the route, I would always be like, why is it such large extensions of nothing? It's kind of hard to understand, but when you get up there, you realize it's just water. So there's no ranches, there's no farms. We're literally going from like Fairbanks to Whitehorse, which is like 1,000 kilometers of nothing. So it was so important to have that support vehicle to carry water, feed for the horses. And then, for the next stretch from when we left Whitehorse and got to northern BC, again, nothing. Just kilometers and kilometers of just trees, and they just cut a hole in the middle, which is the Alaska Highway. So she was just instrumental to that journey, and it was just so cool to get to share that with her. And then when I got to Calgary, I asked her in marriage.
Wow, that's incredible. And they always say that you have to travel with someone before and
Right.
obviously that was one way to make sure that you guys would get.
It was a huge
But
test, right? It was either we kill each other or we fall deeper in love. So yeah, for sure, it was a huge test to our relationship.
so what does your horse life and just your life look like now? How do you come back from 8 years of traveling on horseback and settling back into your regular society?
Yeah, it's really tough, and like I said, that first journey couldn't have shown me, more strongly how hard it was to readapt to, you become a part of the herd literally with these animals, right? Like very few people will live as intensely as I did with horses, because when we have horses today, we have a disconnect for them because we go to ride them at the barn, or even if they're at your house, you turn them on at your pasture and you're in your bedroom. I was sleeping next to these horses, eating next to them, traveling with them. Like literally, there was no disconnect. It was just always these four beings together. So, and the moment I took that saddle off for the last time, boom, that connection was cut. And that was the hardest part, for me. But I think going on those other two long rides kind of helped me bring myself together. I think the horse was my therapy on that second ride to Ushuaia. I was in bad shape when I started that. And by the time I finished, I had mended my heart and my soul. And I think a lot of it was thanks to the horse. And today they're the most special beings in my life. I pay all my bills thanks to the horses. Everything I've created has been thanks to the horse, and I continue to eat thanks to them. But I'm back to normal life where my horses are in Brazil. I get to ride them when I go back, and then I have friends here that I kind of get to go and rope with and hang out. And eventually, I would like to have my own acreage and have my own horses to rope and have fun with them, or go on trail rides and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I'm sure, while you were out there with those horses, and as you said, you formed such a unique bond with them. What is something that you learned about the horse that you wouldn't be able to learn unless you were on that journey?
I think just how powerful they are. You know what I mean? It's unbelievable. There'd be some of those mountains out there that I'd be like, we're not gonna make it. Like, and I would be like holding on their tails while they drag me up these like switchbacks, and they always made it. They always crossed the hardest hurdles that could have been thrown at us, and ultimately, I think that's the biggest lesson. It's just how powerful they are, and also how powerful they are in terms of bringing energy and good to our lives. as I'm sure you know, and everyone listening that have horses, they're such a powerful being, and they can change our days. You could be having the worst day in the world, and you go out there to see your horse and ride, and all of a sudden everything changes, and they require us to be there. And I think there's so, you know, there's so few things in the world that require us to be 100% attent and there. Like you can drive and text, or you know, you can cook and do your makeup, but when you're on the back of a horse, you have to be there, you know, and you have to guide that animal. Otherwise, you're screwed for several reasons. So that's really cool. It's my therapy. It's my way of connecting to God. It's my church. You know, so the horse is everything to me.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, do you still have those 3 horses that you went on the journey with? Are they in Brazil, or where did they, go after the journey?
Yeah, so when I got to Brazil, I retired my 3 kids, Frenchie, Bruiser, and Dude. And Frenchie's still there, causing trouble, breaking fences, and giving my dad a run for his money. My dad takes care of them. I had our family ranch down there. It's 2 hours outside of Sao Paulo. And then the other journeys, I cross each country with its own horse. And then when I would get to the border, the horse would go back to its original owner. And then on the last journey from Alaska to Calgary, I had the amazing opportunity to ride 2 wild horses from the Okanagan Valley, and they're just so hardy, so amazing, and it was just an honor to be able to ride those horses.
What was that like? When you say wild, were they completely untouched, or how did that? Just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. So one of them, Smokey, grade that I rode, was extremely wild. He had someone on his back once or twice in the round pen. He had packed into the mountains once, but literally the first time I got on him, I was like, I'm gonna die. You know, he didn't know how to stop. He didn't know how to turn. He didn't know. He wouldn't let you get on him. So that was a huge learning curve. I'd never worked with a wild horse before. Like the Mustang that I was given on the first journey was completely, trained. So this was a very hard moment for me. I didn't have much time, and I had the guidance of Aaron Stokaya, who's an amazing man who has trained these horses from a very early age, from the Osoyo's native band up there, and he kind of guided me and taught me and helped me train this horse. And then the second horse, Mac, was from a fellow long rider, Jim McCray, so he was already trained, and that ended up helping a lot as well, especially for the beginning of the journey. And by the end of it, Smokey was a totally different horse, and had a lot of kilometers under him, and was bomb proof. And my fiance actually got to ride him coming into Calgary, which is a major city, and that was a true testament of, okay, he's broke now, so he's good to go.
Yeah, that's definitely one way to get him broke. Take him on a cross multiple country trip. So what was it like, when you started out and Smokey wasn't he had never done that before. So what was it like watching him kind of take that in and grow and get used to that lifestyle?
So it was awesome. Like all these long rides, I've been able to watch these horses mature under me. It's a very natural manner to work with a horse. Like the old timers will say, wet saddle blanket. That's the best cure for any horse. But this ride allows them to see everything. Like, you know what I mean? You're exposing these animals to bridges and towns and cities and fire and rain and tarps and you name it. Like they're seeing everything. So not only do you see these horses mature physically, like they are so muscular by the end of this journey and so healthy, and their coats are so shiny, but you also see their minds. And with Smokey, it was amazing because he was the one that kind of went from being almost completely wild to a trained horse riding through Calgary. By the end of this, on my fiance, who's not a huge cowgirl and not very experienced with horses, she can ride, but she's not someone that is going to be turning barrels at the Calgary Stampede. So that was a huge testament, and it was amazing. I was so proud of him, to see how frustrating it was to start with him in a round pen and having to not be able to stop him, to then ride him into the Calgary Stampede and through a major city was just amazing. And that's what it's all about. I don't do this for money or for ribbons or for trophies. I do this because I love it. It's a beautiful way to meet people and see the world. And ultimately, those are the big presents, to see that horse come into his own and become a sturdy animal is amazing.
Yeah, I'm sure it was such a cool thing to watch him develop over the time that you were I'll
Like a proud dad, that's for sure. That's the word I was like trying to look for. I was like a proud father.
I can only imagine. I mean, I'm proud of my horse when he just does something so minuscule in the arena. I can't I can't
Yeah.
imagine taking that. I mean, that is truly like raising a kid. Do you have anything planned in the future? Are you going to do any more long rides, or what? Is that something that you would want to do again?
No, like I always say this was my last long ride. Never say never, right? I don't know what's going to happen in 10 years from now, but, the suffering was real and I really value mental health. And I could see that if I continue this, I may not, be all there. And I don't have kids. I'd like to have a family. I'd like to be there for my children. So, I was kind of like, okay, I'm blessed to be alive. Like it's a miracle that I'm alive today after everything I've done. So let's hang up the old saddle and just go on short trail rides with a beer at the end of the day. My ultimate goal is to have my own travel show. Like I'd like to have an Anthony Bourdain style show, but instead of showing culture through food, I'd like to show culture through ranching and farming and Western heritage and the horse. So I'd like to travel to Mongolia and show their culture and Europe and Latin America. So that's going to be the next step.
Well, I would watch that. That sounds like a great show.
Awesome. There we go. We got one viewer. Let's go.
Yeah. No,
That's
count
awesome.
me in. Yeah.
Beauty.
Um, it's just such an incredible story. I feel like I have things that I am missing. Is there anything else that you want to tell our listeners that you learned or about your experience?
Just give your horses a carrot for me tonight and a pat and smell their fur, because they're not going to be here forever. And any moment that you can get out there and ride them and just or whatever, just feed them, just be around them, take advantage of that because that's what life's all about. And these, like I said, these animals have such a positive impact in our lives, and sometimes we take that for granted. And I know we all have busy days, and it goes from Christmas to Christmas again. But this journey was just a huge learning experience about what's real, and it's not material things, it's not money, it's not cars, it's not clothing, it's our family, the people we love, and the animals we love. So take advantage of this moment that we have with them because it's going to go by really quickly.
Yeah, I love that. That's such a great message for everyone. So where can our listeners find you on social media to
So you
follow?
can find me yeah, for sure. So on Instagram at Filipe Masetti. My name is super complicated, so I'll spell it out. FILIPE MASETTI. Or you can follow the Instagram for the film as well. It's called The Long Rider Film. And yeah, I'd love to connect with you guys. My books are out on Amazon. Long Ride Home, Long Ride to the End of the World, and very soon Last Long Ride. And please, 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 if you can come out to watch the film, like I said, it's going to be in 17 cities across Canada from coast to coast, starting July 8th. As of July 1st, it will be on a 7-day run in Calgary. If you have friends in those cities and towns, please send them the link. You can find it on Cineplex. Just search The Long Rider on their website, and I'm sure you're going to be inspired by the film.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and telling us, just a little bit about your experience and your journey. And I think everyone can learn so much from you. So
Thank you so much, Jillian. Thank you for your time, and thanks for allowing me to share my story with your listeners.
Thank you guys for tuning in to the Ride Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and please be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow Horse and Rider Magazine on social media and find us at horseandrider.com.
If you guys have any questions or comments, please be sure to hit us up at horseandrider@equinenetwork.com. We want to hear from you guys.
And if you like what you're listening to, be sure to leave us a review on iTunes.